Welcome to the conversation. I'm Michael Shure here on TYT Network. And if you're like me, you've probably looked at some of the reactions to how people are getting their information about COVID and just shaking your head. You cannot believe some of the quote unquote facts that come out of people's mouths when you listen to what the doctors are really saying. But luckily for you, we have Fadi Quran here. Fadi is the campaign director for Avaz. He joins us from Memphis, Tennessee, and he knows a lot more about the role that Facebook plays in all of this COVID information we're getting, both dangerous and occasionally helpful, I guess. Fadi, thanks for being on the conversation.
No, thank you for having me.
So, I'm not on Facebook, and sometimes I'm so relieved and proud that I'm not, that very few times I wish that I were, because I hear people doing things on Facebook and seeing people that I like to see, but I'm not. However, I do know that it's in the news for myriad reasons having to do with politics, but there's something sort of in the underbelly of it, which is its effect on COVID. And I know it's hard to bottom line this, but what I'd love to do is talk to you a little bit about Avaz and what you do at Avaz and what the mission of Avaz is, and then to talk a little bit about COVID and why Facebook has played such an important role in how people's perceptions of the disease and the pandemic have been formed. So tell me a little bit about Avaz.
Yeah, definitely. And the best way to think about Avaz is we're the world's largest online civic movement. We have over 63 million people who are part of our network. And the way we organize is essentially we ask around the world, what are the top issues that we should be campaigning about, that we should be fundraising, organizing on? And this has meant that we have campaigned for human rights in the Middle East. We have fought against climate change. We helped organize the Paris Climate March. The challenge came in 2016 when we realized no matter what the issue we cared about was, what the issues we were fighting for were, everything came under threat because of disinformation. This kind of toxic, false and misleading information that was polarizing societies, was putting LGBT communities in Africa at risk. It then put the American elections at risk. We saw what happened in 2016. We saw the consequences of Cambridge Analytica, Brexit in the EU, the genocide in Myanmar. And our organization and our members realized that if we want to build the world most people everywhere want, we need to fight this problem of disinformation that's disrupting our societies. And that's how we began to just build a large investigative team along the side with campaigners that looked at the social media networks and how they were playing a role in amplifying this bad content. And that's what led us to find and began researching the type of health misinformation that was making people sick, and led us to conclude that not only was Facebook affecting people's human rights, putting our democracies in danger, it also was a major threat to public health around the world.
And that comes not just from the misinformation that people could get on Facebook, but also from the notion, like the COVID disease itself, that if you get it, you're a carrier, right? And you take that misinformation and you spread it as if it were, in fact, COVID in a sense, to use that model. I want to know what some of the sort of highlights, one of the that are part of this whole Facebook problem when it comes to COVID. What is some of the misinformation that has been dangerously spewed on Facebook and shared?
Yeah, well, the problem is there's so many different pieces. What our report found, number one, and only looked at a subset of misinformation networks in only 5 countries, and they alone had reached over 3.8 billion estimated views on the network. And the content, for example, one piece that went viral in the US, particularly in California and on the West Coast, was this fake claim that the Stanford Medical Center had told people that if you could hold your breath for 10 seconds, that meant that you did not have COVID-19. And that just spread, even in some cases we found nurses spreading it, thinking that it's true because the misinformation was so well designed. The other types of examples are just fake cures. So you find some networks that want to sell people certain supplements, and so they spread misinformation saying that vaccines don't work, no type of social distancing or masks work. What you need to do is buy this supplement. This thing will protect you. One example was telling people that if they bought a certain supplement that contained vitamin C, vitamin D, and some garlic extract, that would help keep them healthy against this virus. And we're talking this type of content getting tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views. And then you have another level, which is also dangerous, which is the conspiracy theories. So one conspiracy theory claims that Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci are working together to manufacture fear around this disease because they're working with big pharma to sell vaccines, or because Bill Gates wants to implant chips in people's bodies. And we sometimes think that this misinformation, it's only the kind of quacks and ignorant people who believe it. But the truth is that today in the US, polls show that 50% of Americans say that they either would not vaccinate themselves or are unsure whether they would vaccinate or not if there was a COVID-19 vaccine. And this means that this misinformation and people believing it is putting all of us at risk.
Yeah, the overestimating people is something I learned not to do. There used to be a late night on television. They used to have these psychics that would come on with 900 lines, and you'd pay like $4.99 a minute to have your psychic reading read. And I just couldn't believe people would do it. And it turns out they made hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. So it doesn't surprise me at all. What is but not just what is Avaz doing, but what is the recourse? Newspapers have an ombudsman, many of them do. They certainly have editors there that will make corrections and apologize and set the record straight, the good ones. What happens at Facebook though? That doesn't exist there. And what should they be doing that they're not? And what's better than it was before maybe?
That's the question, and it really is terrifying to know that Facebook has a set of solutions that could protect lives and they're not implementing them. The first thing that Facebook should do is that once Facebook detects that there's a piece of misinformation that has gone viral, let's say, I don't know, let's say it's the Russian government seeking to spread misinformation that's telling people not to get vaccinated at some point, and Facebook detects that. Facebook should provide every user on the platform who's been targeted with that misinformation with a correction, saying, the Associated Press or the CDC have found that this is false news, beware. Facebook does not correct the record on that front, and that's the first step that they should be taking. It's simple, be transparent with your users, tell them when they see something that is dangerous to them. The second step that Facebook can do is, for example, in our report, we identified these networks, and their reach is 4 times the reach that they get from Facebook to their websites is 4 times the reach that official health websites such as the CDC or the World Health Organization get when we did a comparison. What Facebook could do, instead of allowing its algorithm to amplify these bad misinformation networks, is Facebook can downgrade a systematic misinformation sharers, so that instead of their content appearing at the top of your newsfeed, it appears at the bottom or doesn't appear at all. Those 2 steps alone could decrease potentially in our calculations the amount of people who see misinformation and believe it by 80 to 90%. If Facebook just took those 2 steps, and it's a real, I would say, disgrace, honestly, that Facebook is not moving in that direction.
Why would they not? I mean, I know it probably, I would say you have no idea why they wouldn't, right? But how does it behoove them to not deal with these problems?
This is a question I think that needs to be asked to Mark Zuckerberg directly. And I have to say, I've spoken with a lot of people at Facebook that are working on this issue, that have smart solutions, and that really care about protecting and informing their users. I don't want to paint an image that everyone at Facebook is bad. There are a lot of good people, but the decision is at the level of the executives. And It's potentially either that Facebook just does not want to show how much misinformation is on the platform. And if you provide the correction every time a user sees misinformation, they're going to begin seeing just how problematic their newsfeed is. The other reason may just be that there's political pressure, right? Because a lot of the disinformation and misinformation is done by political actors. And Facebook may just not be in, they may not want to anger some of those political actors that are spreading this content. And so don't go all the way in implementing these solutions.
And Fadi, when you are working with Facebook and talking to Facebook, and again, it is the executives, is there anything, like what's next for you? What's next for the community organizers and the people that are trying to get this out there if you're not making headway with Mark Zuckerberg and the executive team at Facebook? Is there another avenue into making this happen?
Yes, the first and key step is that we need to organize to push for regulation, whether it's in Europe or in the US and Congress. Facebook and other social media platforms need to be regulated. And that's what we're doing. We're developing legislation, we're speaking with key decision makers to put regulation that forces Facebook to apply those solutions, such as correct the record and detox the algorithm. The second step is releasing these reports and then organizing doctors. We have now thousands of doctors that are part of this movement demanding that Facebook take action. We have survivors of health misinformation and other forms of disinformation, people from the Rohingya community in Myanmar to the Sandy Hook families in the US that are coming together to just say, Facebook, you need to fix this, and putting pressure directly at the company and pushing their employees to also push the executive level to step back and apply solutions that can protect people's lives.
Amazing. An amazing thing about global civic activism is you can have a group like the Rohingya and the Sandy Hook families and bring them together and try and create change. Fadi Quran is the campaign director at Avaz, and this information is so important for TYT members and viewers to hear, because this is exactly what is going wrong on social media, and so many of us spend a lot of time on social media. Though again, I'm not on Facebook. Fadi Quran from Memphis, Tennessee, thank you so much for being with us and for educating our viewers. This is The Conversation.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.